others overcome life and business obstacles the Navy SEAL way.
Every single human being on the planet, we're all naturally gravitate towards complacency, towards taking the easy way out. That's when it becomes very dangerous. So I think doing something hard, getting outside of your comfort zone really helps fight that mentality and that natural urge to drift towards easier complacency. There are some people that are just built with more grit. It builds that same mentality. So, when you get out of the SEAL teams, you already have this disciplined mindset. Leadership comes from one place and one place only, and that's within us. If you hope to lead anyone else well, you have to first learn how to lead yourself.
Yep, 100%.
I don't want to be an influencer. I want to be someone who makes impact. The influencers, I think, are all about in the moment. They're very reactionary, whereas impact goes deeper. Impact is at a heart level. And if I can impact people at the heart level, that's where true change begins to take place. And that's what honestly wakes me up in the morning every single day, Josh, and gets me out of bed. One of my main goals is to make a positive, lasting impact in every single person's life that I come in contact with.
This is Sparta!
Welcome back to Spartan Leadership. I'm your host, Josh Kosnick. Hey, and just a real quick reminder, we are growing real fast, and I appreciate all of the support all of you Spartans are showing us. But remember to review, to subscribe, to like, and most importantly, share these important messages. With me today, a man on a mission to help others overcome life and business obstacles the Navy SEAL way. Former Navy SEAL and pastor, which I got to know last week, Phil, about that a little bit. Active business owner, community leader, father and husband, most important titles. Please join me in welcoming my new friend, Phil Koontz. How you doing, buddy?
I'm good, Josh. Doing real good out here in Colorado, man. It's no complaints, bro. It's a sunny day and it's in the 70s and it's loving life.
Well, that's perfect. Before I get into asking you some questions, I want to make sure if I cross my legs and you guys happen to see the bandage, if you guys are watching YouTube and see the bandage on my leg, that is from some turf burn. I got into a kickball tournament this weekend for autism, and I don't have an off switch yet to my competitive drive, even at my advanced age. And I slid into second base trying to beat a throw and left some of my DNA on the field. From basically my knee down to almost my ankle is all scraped up and quite open wound this morning. So I got it all gauzed up. So in case you had any questions from anyone. And by the way, I am smoking a cigar this afternoon for you guys that like to know which ones I'm smoking. This is a Liga Previta 10, number 10. So fantastic smoke. Highly recommend the Liga Previta brand. So brother, let's get back to you. Thank you for taking time away from your impact mission to join the Spartan community today. You're looking good. I know you're on a personal mission to drop some weight. How's that going so far?
Going good, man. I'm trying all different kinds of stuff. I've been intermittent fasting for about 1.5 years now. I've been tweaking that a little bit. Diet. I mean, losing weight, bro, is all about it's math, right? How much you're putting in and how much you're burning. And so, yeah, trying to hit the gym at least 5-6 days a week, doing a solid hour of cardio and then doing some calisthenics a few days a week too. And we could talk for the whole hour on just what, weight stuff and physical fitness and nutrition. And it's, man, it's important. Life is 4 main components, right? It's mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual, and it all combines together and is interwoven together. So yeah, that physical part is huge.
It's been huge for me as well. Hey, question that I didn't plan on asking after that, but it just came to mind. So when I stopped playing football, because training was such a big part of my life up until that point in college, I went through this period of just kind of like, screw the weight room, screw working out, I'm going to relax. Is that similar when you're done being a SEAL, or you've been operating at a high level, making sure your body's in peak physical condition for however many years you were an operator? Do you go through that kind of like, the fuck it phase after you get done when you get out?
Yeah. Kind of yes and no. I got into that a little bit. I was like, guess what? First thing I did when I got out, I grew a beard because I'm like, I can do this. I don't have the shaving standards anymore, right? The grooming standards. So, but for me, I mean, man, I've been working out. I was a competitive swimmer ever since I was 12 years old. So this physical component has just become more of my lifestyle. So I had a small, like, little time period where I was like, yeah, I don't have to hit it quite as hard. But then honestly, I got right back into it because it was kind of my identity. It was a little bit more of who I was and who, I really became at that point, really foundational for me. So every now and then I've got like a screw it, but man, I can only go 2-3 days and I'm starting to twitch, and I'd be in a straight jacket if it wasn't for the gym, dude. So it was, yeah, but I can relate to that. There's a lot of guys that get out and they're like, screw it, I'm just taking, some time off. But let's face it, it makes it harder and harder and harder to get back into it, once you have that screw it kind of phase. So, and I knew that about me too. I was like, if I take a few months off, I take 6 months to a year off, it's going to be that much harder getting back into my routine and into that good habit. So,
well, that's good information for all to make sure that they don't lose it. And one of my personal rules, and audience has heard me say this, is never miss twice, because then you start forming a habit the opposite way. So making sure that you're continuing to form those good habits. All right. Yeah. So you often preach the importance of getting. And
you're looking pretty buff too, man. Just by the way, you're looking pretty buff too. So I think when we finally meet face to face here in a little bit, we should do like an arm wrestling contest or like a flexing contest or something. You're going to beat me, but yeah.
Maybe on the flexing contest, but we'll see on the arm wrestling. But I appreciate that. I've been working hard trying to continue to, and like you said, the physical drives the mental, and it is such a good, just mental reprieve. I know that if I need to recharge, going to the weight room, because I'm introverted in that regard. When I recharge, I need to be by myself. The weight room is a way for me to recharge so that I can get back to being high impact for all those that I lead as well. All right. Yeah. So first thought or question for you. You often preach the importance of getting outside of your comfort zone. So I love that you are practicing what you preach. You once said, don't surrender your lifelong dreams to escape temporary pain. Let's break that down for our listeners.
Yeah, I mean, doing something hard every day is my goal. Whether it's running an extra mile, doing an extra set or so in the gym, whether it's cold plunge, right? Whether it's in the sauna for a little bit longer, just doing something hard every single day gets you outside of your comfort zone and really helps you to not miss twice. I like that a lot. I like that you, I'm going to probably start using that, but it develops a mentality. It develops this, I'm going to push myself to beyond, to the edge and then beyond every day, and just doing something hard, getting used to that makes it a lot easier than for us to fight that urge to become complacent. Because let's face it, man, we're in the same boat. All the listeners are in the same boat as human beings. Like, I'm no exception being a former Navy SEAL, right? You guys think like, oh my gosh, you must be like a machine. I'm like, yeah, I'm not a robot, dude. Every single human being on the planet, we're all naturally gravitate towards complacency, towards taking the easy way out, towards becoming apathetic, man. And once we get to that point in life where we think we've got it made and we're just going to kind of sit back and relax and just go on autopilot, that's when it becomes very dangerous. So I think doing something hard, getting outside of your comfort zone really helps fight that mentality and that natural urge to drift towards easier complacency.
Yeah, agreed. In business, I'm always pressing harder when things are going well, because I'm fearful of any team's complacency. And then on the opposite side, you have pride, which can also be a bad thing. But when things are going well, my teams always knew I was going to press harder because I was fearful of them being complacent. So love your point there. And I mentioned earlier that you are on a mission to help people overcome life and business obstacles the Navy SEAL way. Dive into that. What is the Navy SEAL way in your opinion?
Yeah, well, we mentioned it right before the call. The one word that comes, or probably two words that come to my mind, are resiliency and grit. And that's it's both and. It's a nature versus nurture. I'd say it's nature and it's nurture. There's some people that are just built with more grit. There's some people that are just built with the ability to be able to have more of that intrinsic drive, that intrinsic motivation. But then we can also teach ourselves to to play in that field as well too, right? To stay in that lane. So yeah, I mean, it's important, man, as far as a Navy SEAL and what that taught me, even growing up, going all the way back to swimming, and the discipline that it took me to get up in the morning, for 2 days, 3 days a week, and six plus days of practice. And it's just, it builds that same mentality. So, when you get out of the SEAL teams, you've already have this disciplined mindset. I'm a big, disciplined kind of guy. I joke around with my wife, man. If I didn't meet my wife, if I didn't have kids, I'd probably be a monk somewhere, being like just super disciplined. And that with the combination of being overseas, right, and being a contractor probably overseas as a vigilante over there. But yeah, man, it's important to develop that mindset, that grit, to have that no quit mentality, that resilience, even when in business, right, in life. Stuff hits the fan, whether it's COVID, whether it's the recession that we're kind of in right now, right? Inflation, prices are going up. We're just to be completely honest, we're going through a hard time with my knife company, Karambit Tactical Knives, and it's how are we going to pivot? And in the SEAL teams, we say you plan, you prepare. Right, you prepare for the worst and hope for the best. So it's that mentality in personal and in business. It's game planning it, right? So it's not playing the what if game and allowing that fear and anxiety to overwhelm you to the point where you can't make that forward progress and be successful. It's just game planning it and figuring out what your contingencies are, what's worst case scenario, and how are we going to shift to that to the unexpected life that occurs.
Yeah, remaining agile in your thought process, humble enough and agile to pivot and adapt, just like you said. Do you mind if I ask you a couple? Or go ahead.
Yeah. So that just sparked one of my. It was a big research study that was conducted in the middle of COVID in 2020, and the Harvard Business School they conducted this big research study, and they surveyed 250 of the Fortune 500 company CEOs, and they asked them, hey, like, what's the one thing that has really caused you to thrive during this time rather than just survive, right? Holding on, white knuckling it, just surviving. What's the one thing? And it was adaptability. It was their ability to be able to adapt to change, forecasting that change, looking, down the road, forecasting it, adapting to it once it comes, and becoming an early adapter rather than a mid to late adapter has really helped a lot of businessmen, myself included. I'm sure you can relate to that as well too. Just how can we get out in front of the change? And then we got to adapt. We got to force ourselves, right? Coming full circle. Humans don't like change, right? We don't like it. We like to remain comfortable. And so that's just one of the ways that we can really begin to be proactive. I like to say we play offense and not defense. So I play offense. I try to play offense as much as possible rather than being reactionary to the stuff that comes and could potentially knock me off course.
You mentioned humans don't like change. I want to see if you've noticed this as well. What I've seemed to notice is that it's not the change that humans don't like, it's the process of change. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I do. And I think it's scary for a lot of people. So if you look at it and you could say, okay, here I am right now. It's a linear path, right? Here I am right now. And this is where I need to get to, but I'm not real sure how to get there. And even if I do have a pretty good roadmap of how to get there, it's still, there's a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of unknowns along the way to get there. And it's just a little bit more comfortable to stay in what's familiar right now. Even so yeah, even if you know where you're supposed to go and you've got a game plan to get there, which is half the battle, it takes that intrinsic motivation. Oftentimes it just takes us running off the cliff, that leap of faith, saying, all right, here we go, we're going to do this, and pick a date. That's important too. A lot of times we procrastinate with what we know we should do. Pick a date, put it on the calendar, and sometime within, I say at least like 3 to 4 weeks, once you have a good plan, like pick a date and go for it, and make sure it happens by that date.
No, that's great. Yeah, it's because a lot of times change is good for us. Like, for instance, losing weight, getting in better cardio shape, quitting smoking, stopping to drinking, whatever the change might be. A lot of times it's a good change or a noble effort that someone's going at, but the pain is in the process of making that change because you're changing the habits that you've always had or have had for a duration of time into a more positive direction. And that's usually the painful part for most people.
Absolutely, man. People don't grow. They don't become better with just with complacency, with apathy, or not pushing themselves, right? It's like going to the gym. The way that you build muscle is you got to tear it down, so it's like the fiery furnace, you are able to weld the strong, thick steel and the metals, by heating it up, getting it really hot, and then you can change it into a sword or a battle axe, or you can make it what you want it to be, but you got to get it really hot. And that heat, that furnace experience, like you said, man, that's uncomfortable. It's very uncomfortable, and it can cause a lot of anxiety, I think, in a lot of people nowadays. And unfortunately, bro, as you know, Josh, we live in the most medicated country in all of the world, man. I mean, it's pretty crazy here in the States right now. There's a lot of people walking around riddled with anxiety and worry and concern and panic attacks. And I mean, and then they medicate, and after a while they look back and they're like, I haven't made any progress in my life. I'm not as successful, and I'm full of fear. I'm allowing this fear to overwhelm me and become this fearful mindset. And it's very dangerous. It's very toxic.
Yep. Agreed. So agree. And we could probably go down a rabbit hole on that medication piece. So I'm going to stay away from that right now. I didn't give you a chance to go into your background at all, but you said you started swimming at age 12, which obviously gives you a huge boost joining the Navy, whether you join the Navy in regular service or through SEAL service. But at what point in your life did you decide that you wanted to serve our country and then to become one of the most elite operators within our military system?
Yeah. I was kind of that weird kid growing up in school, right? I mentioned this in my book, The Truth Behind My Trident. I mentioned it. I'm like, I used to wear like camouflage clothes to school and stuff, and I would like make weapons in my dad's workshop in the basement, and get out and just hunt and trap and all kinds of craziness, So I already knew that like the wiring was a little different, right? And I was okay with that. And I had no idea I wanted to go special forces, or at least the Navy SEAL route when I began swimming. I actually graduated from Miami University with my undergrad in marketing and statistics, thinking that I was going to, be in marketing and have the corporate job. And man, I joke around with people. Corporate America is the one thing that got me to ring the bell, the figurative bell. So I was there for like probably 6-7 months, and man, I had enough. I'm sure you've seen the movie Office Space, right? That was me, dude. I was the TPS reports, showing up to work in suit and tie and cubicles. And I'm like, I can't do this. I'm like, this is not me. So that's when I punched out. And that's when I joined. I looked at different branches, and the Navy just made sense with my swimming background and the comfortability that I had in the water. But even from a young age, I knew that there was just something that was a little bit different about me, something that was a little bit more intense. And so I think it was a good fit.
So you got into the corporate world before you even joined any of the branches?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Interesting. Because like a lot of my friends that pursued going in the military and service joined right out of high school. So you joined a little bit later. Was it because you and I are around the same age? Was it 9/11 have anything to do with it?
Yeah, a little bit it did. Absolutely. But when I got out, I was like, the corporate America thing just wasn't a good fit for me. And so, and I'm, really very patriotic and just have just that higher purpose of serving and being a part of something much bigger than myself. And then, 9/11 hit, man. And I'm like, I got to do something. So I got in early 2004. So it was a little bit after 9/11, but I could sense that was my road to take. And even though I had my degree, it actually kind of worked out good for me. So I actually went enlisted. So I was up in the Northeast at the time, and all the officer billets were already used up. So you have to get an officer billet. You have to get your package together as an officer if you want to go in, and it has to get approved and recommendations. And all the billets were already used up for that year. So I was like, well, screw it. I want to see action. I want to get in the fight. So I went enlisted, and while I was in the teams, I found out that about 50%, a little over than 50% of enlisted SEALs actually have their degrees. So they went the same route I did. They just wanted to see some action and get right in. So it was actually kind of surprising to me. So that's why I didn't go officer, and I just wanted to get right in and see some action. So.
Okay. So I think our audience would be, I'd be remiss in our audience if we didn't ask a little bit on your background there, because as you and I talked about last week, a lot of civilians, and I put myself in that camp because I went to college to play football, and then both my grandfathers served, but I never had that itch for whatever reason it was, even though it is familial. My first cousin took after my grandfather's, stuff of that nature. But we always kind of want to know, like, could we have cut it? And so what is, in your opinion, the difference between someone that rings the bell and drops out of buds versus someone like yourself that makes it through?
Yeah, that is the $1 million question, Josh. That's what the Bush senior administration, all the way back in the 90s, really tried to figure out, is like, where are these guys, and what are the certain characteristics and capabilities that they have that maybe no one else has, because they wanted to get more SEALs through the pipeline. They wanted to increase special warfare, because that was the direction that our modern day warfare is going. It's less boots on the ground, just conventional forces. It's very much unconventional surgical strikes, drone work, that sort of thing. And so they're like, we need to get more of these special operators through the training. So where are these guys at? So long story short, the government spends millions of dollars in this sociological study. And really the only two pieces of information that were valuable at the very end, as far as the strategic recruiting capabilities, or the general area of the country that a lot of SEALs come from, and the two sports that a lot of the SEALs who have made it have participated in, like in college or high school. Other than that, it's like, you either got it between your two ears or you don't. You either have that grit, you're hungry for it, yeah, or you're not. It's just, how bad do you really want it? And for me, I went in, and I, not to sound cliche, but I didn't give myself the option to quit. I was like, I'd rather die than quit. And we can get into a little bit with my former spouse if you want to, but when I was there, I was like, I'd rather die than quit. I mean, literally, I didn't want to crack that door and say, if it gets this bad, if I get hypothermia this many times, like if I get hurt this bad, then I might ring the bell. I did. I was like, I just slammed that door shut to the option of quitting, and said, you know what? I'd rather die than quit. And I'm a man of faith. So for me, if I died, I met Jesus. And if I don't die, I become a Navy SEAL. So for me, it was a win-win, bro. Either way, I was walking out on the winning end of that, of that equation. So.
I love it. And you and I talked last week, and I had the Machine, Nick Lavery, on the podcast. He came out on July 4th, and I asked him a unique question at the end, which I'll ask you as well. But his response was that he doesn't believe that great leaders come from the military in general. Now, he's Green Beret, served in a different operations unit, but he said it was because it was far more positional and rank-oriented leadership, and do as I say, right, versus leadership through leading in the front, which I got to imagine is very different on the operators teams, on the SEALs teams. And you've probably experienced some great leadership versus the rank and file soldiers that just have to follow the commander up the chain. So talk a little bit about your leadership, or the leadership that you saw within the SEALs units, and how well that played out for you in learning, not only while you're serving, but also running your companies now.
Yeah, that's a great question. There's a lot there. First and foremost, leadership comes from one place and one place only, and that's within us. And if you've got a heartbeat, you're a leader. If you hope to lead anyone else well, you have to first learn how to lead yourself well, right? And if you want to be a contributing member to society, you're a leader. You got to lead yourself well. You got to figure out what that looks like. And that's a lot what I talk about during one of my 4 presentations that I do is 3-dimensional leadership, leading in, out, and up. And it's really important. So I would say, first and foremost, you have to look at yourself and see where you can be more squared away, a little bit more good to go, and tweaking some things in your life to help you lead yourself better. Making sure you have margin, making sure you're resting, making sure you have that good work-life balance. I mean, I could go all into that kind of stuff. Breathing techniques and relaxation and meditation and prayer. I mean, all of it, man. It's huge. But in the SEAL teams, it's kind of a mixed bag, dude. I would actually agree with my Green Beret brother a little bit more. I mean, in the Navy is the same. The big Navy and how we are organized and how you make rank is the same as the SEAL teams. We don't have like a separate pecking order. I mean, it's all the same, and it's driven by the Department of the Navy. So time in service has most to do with it. So if you're a turd, which is what we say in the teams, right? You're a shitbag, you're a turd, but you've got 15 plus years, then you've got opportunity to make it to senior chief or chief, senior chief, master chief, on the enlisted side, and you're going to make that rank just because of your time in the service. So I've seen the good, bad, and the ugly, man, in the SEAL teams. You know what? My first platoon chief, when I was just showed up to SEAL Team 10. His nickname was Sam. He was a small, angry man. he led with an iron fist. He was more of a do as I say, not as I do, or it's my way or the highway. And he ruled with fear and intimidation and a lot of coercion and that sort of thing. So he was a micromanaging leader. And so I've been under that leadership style. And then I've been under some leadership styles in the SEAL teams, and that they were very empowering. And they're like, look, man, we're going to normalize you making mistakes. Like, we're not going to make it so bad for you that you're afraid to make a mistake because of the repercussions and the consequences that you might occur, from us. And of course, there's always consequences to our mistakes, but they weren't so bad. And he kind of normalized or made it a part of the learning process and empowered us, gave us the power to be able to make the decisions on our own, and then to screw it up, and then to learn from those mistakes, right? And then learn from those and become a better person. So in my mind, the four most powerful words a leader can say is, I messed that up. And there's a lot of leaders out there that don't have the balls, they don't have the courage, they don't have talking about pride, right? They're ruled with pride, but they don't have the ability within them, the courage within them to admit that they made a mistake, but instead they're just blaming other people and other circumstances around them. And so yeah, man, it's kind of unfortunate, but there's even quite a bit of bad leadership even in the teams as well too.
That's interesting. You say that, and so it doesn't matter if it's a Fortune 100 company or the highest operators on the planet on the teams as he's speaking. There's good and bad leadership in both, and plenty that we can draw away from. So speaking of leadership, and speaking of staying agile, there's three questions that you've talked about. And I want to lay those out for everyone and then get your opinion on how they hold weight both in business and in the teams. What went right? What went wrong? And how can we improve? How do those three questions hold weight in the Navy as well as life and business?
Yeah, dude, huge. So what you just described right there is an AAR, an after action review. And we would do this. So this concept has revolutionized the SEAL teams. We started doing AARs about 15 to 20 years ago. And that's really what has helped us remain tip of the spear. After every single live fire evolution that we go through, and most importantly, after every single mission that we go on, we circle back together at the FOB or in the green zone or right there at base camp. And before we're eating, before we're showering up, taking care of our gear, anything else, we circle up together and we ask ourselves those three questions that you just asked. So what went right, what went wrong, and how can we improve? And the reason why, in my opinion, Josh, that this has been so clutch, so paramount for us is because it helps you adopt a humble learning attitude. When you're able to say, look, what went wrong, bro, I screwed that up. I made that wrong call. I told that guy to turn right there, and it was at the wrong time. Or I put that slap charge on, too big of a charge on that door. I put it on an inward opening door. I mean, whatever. There's a myriad of mistakes that we can make in the teams, and your ability to be able to admit, hey, I screwed that up. I own that. I'll pay the man for it. I'm going to take my licks for it. Is huge. And then, what went right? Let's capitalize on what went right. And then how can we improve? Is how can we replicate what went right? How can we improve based on the mistakes that we made? So in business, I'm telling people all the time, you got a high value client that's coming in, or you're planning an event, right? The event goes hopefully the way that you wanted it to at the very end of that high value client meeting, or a weekend event, or whatever it might be, a training session. It's always important to circle back up and ask ourselves those questions, and don't be afraid to take ownership for the mistakes that you've made, how you've screwed it up, and then let everybody know. It's like, hey, I would rather follow somebody who's able to say I messed that up rather than someone who doesn't think that their shit doesn't stink, right?
100.
Because it shows their humanity. It shows their vulnerability. It shows their relatability, and that they're strong enough. They're a strong enough leader and person, have the courage to be able to admit when they're wrong. And that's the guy that I want to follow.
100%. Out of curiosity, you do AARs with your spouse in parenting your kids?
Yeah, we do.
That's awesome.
I had no idea you were going to ask me this, and so I appreciate the shotgun question. As a matter of fact, I can't share any details with my younger daughter, Bria. She's 10. We just recently found out that she's been making some bad decisions, some bad choices, and she's been keeping it from us. She's hid it from us and been pretty deceptive with us. And so, my wife and I are circling up and we're like, okay, how are we going to handle this? How are we going to game plan this? And what's our war plan? Right. And then we go and we talk to our daughter, and based on what she says, and we get back together and we're like, hey, I disagreed with what you said there. And by the way, parenting 101, don't disagree with each other in front of your kids, right? Always kind of agree in the moment with your spouse, and then behind closed doors, be like, hey, can we massage that a little bit more? I don't quite, follow up. I don't quite agree with you or see eye to eye on this point. Is there something else that we can tweak here so we can agree? And, but yeah, man, I mean, in parenting, even with your spouse, it's a constant communication. It's a constant AAR, if you will. Hey, what went right in that conversation, or in this situation? What went wrong? What did we do? How did we mess up? Maybe I lost my temper. Maybe I was biting in the way that I responded to my daughter. I was too aggressive, with my verbiage. Maybe the consequence was too harsh. I mean, even my nonverbals, like maybe I slammed the door, maybe whatever it might be. None of us are perfect. And then how
Right.
can we improve when we go back to them and check back in with them and see how things are going as we help them navigate making better choices and recorrecting that path that they're on.
Yeah, I 100% co-sign your advice to never disagree with your spouse in front of your children. Don't correct them. Don't disagree with them. You guys present a united front, because if you do, you'll teach them the play mom versus dad card, because they're going to try that anyhow, because kids are the ultimate salespeople. And so they're going to play that anyhow. So if you get them even a little tip of you guys disagreeing, they're going to play that even harder. So, and it's a respect thing. So I love that you brought that up, and how people can course correct behind closed doors.
And to use like a counseling term, I'm a life and business coach. So in order to use a counseling term, that also creates and can create a triangulation, right?
Yep.
Where the child is pitting one parent, or where the parent's kind of taking their side, and going to the other parent, and as like this united front. Man, that triangulation it's toxic to a marriage and to a family unit together. And so if you want peace, if you want harmony, like you said, man, you got to be a united front with your spouse and get on the same page. Even if you disagree in the moment, you can always spend some time behind closed doors to figure stuff out.
Yeah, 100% agree. This is a great segue, because I want to talk about influence versus impact. And this can be in life and business and parenting, however we want to take this. But we live in a world where being an influencer is pretty trendy right now. And I mean, especially with the Gen Z and below, and even my daughters now, like we don't let them on social media, but even on YouTube, there's ability for them to scroll basically like TikTok, because of YouTube Shorts and whatnot. So we live in this world where influencer is really trendy. But what are the younger generations missing when it comes to true influencing?
Yeah, dude, such a great question. Thank you. I'm chuckling to myself, because I'm flashing back, and I've got 5 kids. Every single one of my kids at one point has said that their goal in life, that they want to grow up and become a social media influencer, a YouTuber. And I'm like, no, don't do that. Don't say that. It's a slippery slope. Yeah. Cause everybody wants the fame. So I would say, man, I don't want to be an influencer. I want to be someone who makes impact. An influencer to me is it's like tip of the iceberg. It's like the icing on the cake. It's just a surface level. Hey, I want to influence you, like this rah, 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 let's do it, and run through a brick wall. And then guess what? You're waking up the next day and you're still depressed. You're waking up the next day and you still feel stuck. You wake up the next day and you're still get, hard on yourself and beating yourself up and pissed off. And, so the influencers, I think, are all about in the moment. They're very reactionary. They're very, just in the here and now kind of thing. Whereas impact goes deeper. Impact is at a heart level. And if I can impact people at the heart level, that's where true change begins to take place, rather than just pumping people up with a bunch of feel good or, a bunch of funny videos or whatever, and then making them feel good for 30 seconds or a minute. And then what? You turn off the phone and it's still, yeah, I'm still in my life, and that's, social media, dude, it's huge nowadays. They've actually even termed like social media depression, where you're on social media, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, and you're looking at all these reels of how awesome people's lives are, and they're not honest. They're not transparent. They're not being authentic, right? On through social media.
Right.
And yeah, so you don't think that they have bad days, right? And you're like, oh, look at their life. It's just perfect. And my life's a train wreck. And that's where that depression, if we're not careful, that's where that still small voice will come in and start to try to convince us that we're alone, isolated on an island of misery, and that we feel stuck. And that's, man, it's a dangerous place to be in. So yeah, that whole influencer thing, as cool as it sounds, it's, I'd rather make an impact in people's lives. And that's honestly what wakes me up in the morning every single day, Josh, and gets me out of bed. One of my main goals is to make a positive, lasting influence or impact in every single person's life that I come in contact with and that I'm speaking to or that I'm coaching. So making that positive, lasting impact in their lives is what drives me, not just pumping them up with a bunch of feel-good kind of emotions.
Yeah, we're 100% aligned in our missions, because that's the same for me, having that impact. I may butcher this quote, but Pablo Picasso said that your mission in life is to find out what your gift is and then give it back to the world. And that's what true impact is giving your unique divine gifts that God gave only you and give those back to the world. And so the other piece that came to mind as you're talking about the social media piece is, I don't think enough people are aware of this, but most people know that China created TikTok. What I don't think most people know is that the algorithms in China versus the algorithms in the US are extremely, vastly different. Couldn't be more polar opposite. In the US, they're showing us mostly TNA and dances and stupid pranks and all the different stuff. And if you show cleavage, it's going to get more blah, 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 blah. It's just showing us mindless entertainment. In China, they emphasize learning and development and growth and people doing cool shit. So the algorithms are set up for our kids to become dumber and their kids to become smarter.
Right.
Okay, so you as a parent need to know this. You have to set up safeguards on your kids' social media. You cannot let them fall into this trap, because the algorithm is set up purposely for our kids to fail and their kids to succeed. Our kids to become dumber, their kids to become smarter. So you need to know that as a whole, because I don't think that's widely known. Most people know that China owns TikTok. I don't think they know that the algorithms are different.
Yeah, and the terrifying thing with that equation is you extrapolate that then into the future 2 or 3 generations beyond this point, and that's where it gets really scary.
Really
right?
scary.
That's where they really get the leg up. And let me just, if I can, small little tangent, and that is that as far as social media goes, the average age that a child is exposed nowadays to pornography is 8 to 9 years old. And so along with those, that's what sparked it in my mind when you said have those devices, have the parental controls, or have those apps, where you can control what your kids are, the safeguards that you can control and see what your kids are looking at and stuff. Huge. I tell parents all the time, man, if your kid has a smartphone, that's exactly like giving them a loaded gun. And it's just a matter of time, before those ads pop up and they get curious and they're like, oh, what's that? And before you know it, man, they've gone down a very, very dangerous, dark hole that if you don't catch that soon is going to crush their soul. It's going to wreck their lives. So along with social media, and having the parental controls and the safeguards there, man, making sure that you've got that as well too, because that pornography thing is a major tool in the enemy's hand nowadays.
100%. In fact, for those of you new to Spartan Leadership, we had a fentanyl expert on, and he was talking about how fentanyl is being accessed and paid for through these Grubhub apps and stuff of that nature. Like it's just utilizing emojis to place an order for one of the worst drugs on the planet, if not the worst drug on the planet. And then you have even games like Roblox, which seem really innocent. Pedophiles have infiltrated Roblox because who plays Roblox? Kids play Roblox. So pedophiles have now infiltrated Roblox, and there's, I think it's condos that are set up. I was reading about this as well, that because my kids do play Roblox, that's one of the games that seemingly was safe. And then you realize that there's also some bad shit that can go down with even what seems to be an innocent game.
Yep. It's terrifying, man. They'll get kids to talk to other kids, but behind these kids are the pedophiles that are grooming them, and coaxing them and feeding them what to say. And we live in a crazy world, bro.
Crazy world. Now, I was thinking about, I always want to give the audience a tactical takeaway. And we've talked about a lot of impactful stuff, but I was just thinking about that influence versus impact. Has there been any one thing that you feel like you've crushed it on parenting wise to teach your kids to be impactful versus just influencers? Of all the mistakes we all make, I know you're going to say, like, we all make mistakes. I'm thinking about what's that tactical takeaway? You're like, man, I crushed that.
Yeah, 100%. The first thing that came to my mind, it's the very reason I got out of the SEAL teams. I was there. I had a career in front of me. I had done just under 6 years, and I had an instant family. I had kids, and I told myself, like my goal, my value system is, God, family, country. And I'm like, I've got kids. And of our 2-year cycles of 720 days in 2 years, we are gone for 540 of those days with workup, with deployment, with schools that we go to. I mean, we're gone all the time. So for me, no one's ever sitting on their deathbed, laying in their deathbed, wishing they had another day in the office or another sale or another mission or, whatever. They're always wanting one thing and one thing only, and that's more time with their loved ones. So it was a hard call for me, man. But I got out of the military. I got out of the Navy, and so I could spend more time with my kids, so I could be the dad that shows up to holidays, to dance recitals and soccer practices. And so the one thing I think oh man, and this is an everyday choice, but the one thing I'm striving to continue to succeed at, and I think I've done a pretty good job, and that is being present with my kids. When I go and public speak, I'm traveling around the country. I'm gone for a day and a half, maybe 2 days at the most, so I can come back and have very intentional time with my kids where I'm putting down the cell phone. I'm wrestling with them. We were playing Legos, last night. We're jumping on the trampoline. We're building forts, whatever that might be. I'm even painting my daughter's nails, right? And she's painting mine. I'm like, it's all good, man. Like that quality time, and dating your kids. I mean, that's huge. I got 5 kids. There's not a whole lot of free time that we get, but taking the time to schedule a date with your kid, being able to take my daughter out for ice cream once a month, or my son, just throwing the baseball with them, or whatever it is, that one-on-one time, that date time, man, that speaks volumes to them. It just shows them that you love them, that you're putting them first, and that you really do care about them and value them. And so that's my long answer, man, to your question, is just that intentional time with our kids.
Yeah, that's really important for everyone to hear, is because our time is limited, and not only the day-to-day time, but also the span of time that we have with our kids. I'm very cognizant of that. So that quality time over quantity time is really, really important, and not getting sucked into our devices or TV or anything of that nature that can take your attention away from the things that are most important to you, or at least should be most important to you, which is your kids. Sure. Really, really good stuff. I think I'd be remiss if I didn't ask.
I was going to say, and I realize too, there's probably some listeners right now, and they're like, look, like that's kind of pie in the sky, right? Like it's easier said than done. Like I'm going through, I'm a single mom. I've got 2 kids. I have a full-time job and I got to go back to school. And so let me just say this as a caveat to some of the listeners. There will be seasons of your life, hopefully shorter seasons, but there will be seasons of your life where you can't have as much quality time as you want and quantity time as you want. But that's okay. Communicating that to your kids and then making sure that when that season is done, you don't continue on with that same pattern of being that little hamster on the wheel and always, work, produce, and ignoring them or neglecting them. So I just wanted to say that I do understand that in certain seasons, starting your own small business, going back to school, there's going to be a lot of demands on your time that you can't. So there's an ebb and a flow that's there as well too. But I would say when you look at the entirety of your life, you got to make sure that your kids are a priority and that you're spending that good quality time with them and being intentional. So that was just my caveat there.
No, I love it, because what you're talking about is communicating with your kids like they are a friend, like they are an adult, even though they're not yet. You're explaining the why behind things. Like you and I both travel for work. I don't a ton, but what I do when I do travel, I have made a promise to them and myself that I come back a better person than I left them. And I always explain the why, because they frankly ask. And if you don't tell them, or you just tell them it's none of their business, they'll stop asking you, which means they've stopped caring or you've broken that communication. So I always explain why, or where, if I say I'm going to New York, here's why I'm going to New York. If I'm going to Ohio, this is why I'm going to Ohio. And so then they know, and then here's when I'm going to be home. And then we'll FaceTime in between and make those, and just continue to build that relationship and communicate is really, really important. So I love that you went there with that caveat. I was going to say, or ask you, I'd be remiss, because it's a huge part of your story, and it was interesting for me to learn this last week as well. So you go from SEAL to Seminary. Describe that progression. Was it just like, I've been in combat for a long time, seen some bad things, done some bad things, I better get right with God? Or was this something that had been on your heart for a while?
Yeah, I love it. A lot of people come up to me scratching their head like, dude, how in the world did you go somebody I was just talking to a couple of days ago, what did he say? It was like, he went from being a stripper to a nun. Working the pole to working the cross, right? That was hilarious. So I tell people, I'm like, God just moved me from the physical fight to the spiritual fight. I grew up believing in Jesus. My dad was a pastor growing up, and I wasn't a perfect kid by any means. But I've always had that connection, and that faith, and it really started to solidify when I got to college, when I really started to own it for myself. But the door opened. So I got out of the military. I was a contractor for a little while in North Carolina on on Fort Bragg in Fayetteville. And I was doing some sensitive site exploitation there, teaching the Green Beret what SSC looks like and how to do it effectively. And then I found out that the home that we were renting was under foreclosure, and the contract had dried up. It was like everything was aligning in a really terrifying way. Like, holy crap, like where are we going to live and what am I going to do? So God opened the door for me to move back to Cincinnati, Ohio, which is where I was born and raised, and become a community life pastor there. And just used my real life experiences, man. I've had deaths in the family. I've had my former spouse died of breast cancer, stage 4 breast cancer. I've been let go of jobs. I've been hungry before. I've seen craziness, dude. And just taking those skills and applying those to people's lives and encouraging them and praying for them. And so I don't have like a doctorate in divinity, but I got my PhD in the School of Hard Knocks, and so I did that for a little while as a pastor for 4 years. I was in Cincinnati for a couple of years, and then that's what moved me out to Colorado. I was a community life pastor up in Aurora, Colorado, at the Smoky Hill Vineyard for a little while, and then about 2 years after that, that's when I felt God kind of tapping me on the shoulder saying, hey, it's time to go back to school. So I utilized my GI Bill. It was completely free for me, so I'd be stupid not to. Even though school wasn't a really awesome fit for who I am, I'm more of a kinetic learner. So I went back to school, got my master's in leadership, and and then, the rest is kind of history. Started public speaking after that and stuff. So yeah, it wasn't like, hey, I got to get right with God because of the demons in my closet kind of thing. It was more of a just utilizing my gifts and my talents to further the kingdom in a different way.
Oh, that's really good. Yeah, I just I touched on that in your bio, and I felt like the audience would be like, "Hey, Josh, you missed a question there if I didn't ask you that." So I wanted to make sure we touched on it for sure. All right, so last question before we let you go, because I know you got to fly out. What's an unpopular belief that you hold to be true that most others would disagree with?
There's a lot. I mean, we could get into a lot of theology and like doctrine and some dogma there, with the disagreement. I don't know which direction I want to take this. I would say, well, probably at least half of the country would disagree with me on this one. So I don't know the percentage of the number of people that have to disagree with me on this, but I believe that life is precious and is formed at conception. And so, I'm very, my wife, I'm very, very pro-life. And I know that the direction that things are going right now are, again, just really sad as far as, terminating life, even at birth and beyond birth. And just that whole question of where, when is life exist? And my father-in-law is a neurosurgeon. And so he, the brain, as the brain is developing and the science behind and the biology behind all that. So I don't want to go too deep down that hole, but yeah, man, I'm a big pro-life guy. So
yeah, well, that's important too. And you're right. It's a very divisive topic, which is it's right on par with the question. And so it's good to know where you stand, because, and it's okay for people to, disagree. And that's the beauty or what should be in our country. And for coming from someone that's fought for this country to be able to have that right to believe what he believes. So I appreciate that.
Sure. And I understand that there's some rare cases of like rape, or, if the child's going to end up like killing the mother and then dying themselves. I mean, there are some examples where I think there's some exceptions, but that is very, very few and far between. And there's actually a lot of people that I know where they've shared with me, hey, you know what, like my parents legit said that they were going to abort me, but they chose not to. My sister is actually one of those. She was date raped and chose to have the baby. And they become amazing people and do so much good, for life and for society and for humanity. So you just never know, you never know the person and the plans that God has for that unique individual. And it's their choice, in my opinion. You're right. I don't want to discount the whole, my body, my choice, but man, they don't get a choice. They don't get a say so, right? Because they can't talk. And so it's their body too. And it's, it's their choice. So.
Yep, 100%.
I'm on thin ice right there, but I'm going to keep it there.
Hey, no. Yeah. That's the point of the question, and it's just you and I talking. The rest of the people can chime in comments if they choose to disagree with us on it. But I agree with you, and again, I also agree with those exceptions where life may be at risk, ectopic pregnancy, stuff like that. But also remember, for those that are, because they always want to highlight those, that is the very slim minority of abortions, very, very slim. So
very.
Anyhow.
Oh, it's like less than 1%. I mean, yeah.
So, where can the audience find you, book you, learn more about you? Where's the best spot for them to go or follow?
Yep. So they can go to my website. It's just my name, Phil Koontz. So PhilKoontz. That's Kilo Oscar November Tango Zulu, philkoontz.com. You guys can look me up. You can reach out to me, follow me on all my social media channels, and then learn a little bit more about my knife company. Maybe in another time, another place, we can talk about that. But I own Karambit Tactical Knives. It's the tertiary weapon that I had in the SEAL teams. It's what I'm carrying on me today. So love this bad boy.
Beautiful piece.
We say it's the only knife you bring to a gunfight. So it's very true. I can pull this thing out faster than I can get my CCW out, right? My concealed carry. So it's cool. I love it. Love the business. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. And just so the audience knows, Phil and I and a couple other buddies are working on an amazing experience, and we'll just leave it at that because it's really in the early stages now, but a lot more work for Phil and I to do together. in the future. I appreciate your time. I will always tell you this. Thank you for your service to our country. We'll always honor our veterans in that regard. And Spartans, share this episode. Phil had a lot of good stuff for you to digest today, a lot of good tips from being a leader, business owner, in service to our country, and a parent. Remember, the good and great are the enemies of possible. Lead like a Spartan today.